But if I'm not posting all the time, people think, oh, business must not be very good for Baxter right now. Like, that's not always the case.
Right.
Like, it's the perception game is really what it comes down to.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Always On Point podcast with Kristen Ambos. This is a really exciting time. I am sitting here with Baxter Colburn from Colburn Creative. So for those of you that might not know, he is the guy behind all the scenes, taking care of my filming and taking care of the videos that I've done. And he's really brought me out of my shell. So I was so excited to have him on this new podcast to discuss marketing and why it's so important, because I think you would agree, Baxter, that it's probably one of the biggest forms of communication right now with all the social media world out there, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, we talk about this a lot. It's a very noisy world right now.
Yes.
So if you can find a way to stand out in some capacity, that is important. And that's where marketing comes in.
Absolutely. So before we get too far into it, Baxter, if you can, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, absolutely.
Your background and what you're doing now.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be a guest on your show. So
Yes,
thank
my
you very
pleasure.
much. You did make me laugh too for a moment when you were like, "Oh, to help me come out of my shell." I was like, "No." I'm like, "You're pretty out of the shell in general,
Okay,
but
fair.
Maybe on video.
Sure,
out of your
on
shell
video.
right?" But no, I live here in the Green Bay area. I've been in business for Colburn Creative for almost 4 years now. Went officially full-time at the end of September. I was running it part-time, and now it's my full-time everything, and it's been a great journey. I do a lot of photo and video work for businesses and brands, lifestyle, real estate, vacation rentals, you name it, we shoot it pretty much. So
You
it's
do.
a lot of fun.
You do, and so good at what you do.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
Literally. And I couldn't have been more thrilled when you said you were finally going full time.
Yes.
Because let's be honest, you were probably working 2 full-time jobs.
Yes, yeah, and don't get me wrong, the 2 full-time incomes was really nice, but
Yes.
then obviously to go full-time with just one is it's been an adjustment for sure
Yeah.
for the family, but we've had a lot of fun with it so far, and
Good.
excited to see what the next steps are.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
So awesome. So one of the things that has been important to me, and you kind of felt it with me the last round of videos we did, where I think and you said you've been in this for 4 years now,
Yes,
doing
yep.
this 4 years, right? And I've been doing videos on my own, and then with you, and doing marketing
Yep.
for a little over 4 years, 4 or 5 years, but truly on the video side, my
Yeah.
YouTube channel and things, about 4 years. And the thing I struggled with this last 6 months was burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a hard thing to come up with so much content. And I really wasn't sure how to talk about it. I think the last blooper reel you did was a perfect
We
storm.
just need more bloopers, I think, is all we need.
I think so too. They're so fun, but that's real. That's
Yeah.
real, and what a lot of people did and what they go through. And for me, I have been talking to you about a podcast for over a year,
Yes, yep.
and was really struggling to commit because I was really afraid of what would I talk about
Yep.
on the mortgage side of things that really brought it home for people.
Yeah.
Something that was entertaining yet useful, educational.
Correct.
All the things that I stand for.
Yep.
And so we finally got together, and you talked me into doing this as a
Didn't take much.
no,
Yeah.
it didn't. Okay, fair enough.
I was like, you really need to do this. You're like, okay. I'm
Okay.
like, awesome. Here we go.
But I was so grateful that you stayed on me, because if you hadn't, I probably would have just pushed it aside.
Right.
And as we sit here today, I'm just so thrilled to be getting this
Yeah.
out there. So tell us a little bit more for anyone in the real estate industry, or just really any industry in general, when they're content creators, what that burnout looks like, and what you, as now a full-time creative film and print person, are going to do to help them.
Yeah, I think burnout is a very real thing, right? I think the world as a whole, as we mentioned, has just made it a lot harder, or a lot easier, I would say, to burn out because of the rate of consumption, right? People
Yeah.
are always on their phones. People are always on a computer. There's a screen in their face in some capacity.
It's a great point.
It's one of those things where it's like, I feel like all I'm doing is consuming all day.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Why, and it's motivation, I feel like, is at an all-time low for a lot of people, because they feel so burned out or so pressured or pushed in so many different directions, that the creative side of things, the more you're around that industry, the more people that I've talked to, and they say it's really hard to stay motivated all the time,
Right.
because everybody wants their stuff yesterday, right?
Yep.
Like
Never fast
I'm
enough.
already editing this podcast as we're talking because I know you want it already, right? But like it's that pressure almost sometimes as a creative is, well, I need it now because the industry moves so fast in any industry, not just real estate. I mean, that's a whole nother thing, right? But it's being able to understand like what it is that you want to do, how can you do it at a high level, and then are you okay with putting your phone down or your computer away and just breathing for a second? And I'm not great at all of that. Yes, exactly. I'm not great at that.
It's tough.
Yes, it very much is. So that's where that burnout comes from, is that constant drive or need to always be relevant or be involved in some capacity. Because if I'm not creating, then people think, oh, well, business must be bad. Business is this. I'm like, or I could be editing and I could be recording things and I could be in client meetings and my business could still be growing.
Right.
But if I'm not posting all the time, people think, oh, business must not be very good for Baxter right now. Like, that's not always the case.
Right.
Like, it's the perception game is really what it comes down to.
Absolutely. And it's so true too. And part of me thinks, and I just heard this last night, so something you just said made me feel like it. So we were watching this documentary, if you will, and it was talking about how kids, like under 10, are watching 7 hours of screen time per day.
That's insane. Not at my house.
No, it was never allowed at our house either like that. But okay, so let's just put that down. That's children. Now adults.
Yeah.
You know, adults are probably more like 10 to 12 hours per day.
Yeah.
And so I could understand you saying that, like how that meshes together with the consumption side of it. So that word just really hit me on that, because you're right. And then it's, well, if you record anything over 10 seconds, they won't watch it anymore. So you're like, well, what can I really get out in 10 seconds? That's where it was for me.
Yeah.
I can't educate anyone on mortgage in 10 seconds.
Or it's the viral hook too, not to cut you off, right?
No,
I need,
please.
in the first 5 seconds of the video, you need to hit me across the face so hard that I'm like, now I have to see whatever you talk about. And that's really, really difficult to do consistently, regardless of what it is, let alone in an industry like yourself where mortgages, let's be honest, it's not the sexiest thing to be like, social media mortgage.
What are you talking about?
Right.
No, I'm just kidding.
But you know what I'm saying, though, right?
Completely
Certain industries, it's like, oh, of course it's easy to come up with all these things because it's X, Y, and Z, and whatever I want. But when you're in an industry where it's more education first, which is very valuable information, it's so hard to get people's attention. It's like, yeah, I know I should refinance. Yeah, I know I should do this, or I should talk about the VA. Well, I got it. Like, but it's not something that people are like, oh my gosh, like I gotta go check this out because I know it's gonna be, really, really good.
Thank you. It is so hard. It is. Like, I'm not showing off a fun house. Not saying that, but you constantly get new listings as an agent. Not saying that it's easier for an agent, but I'm just saying people are interested in that house. That's
got a little
the
bit wider
sexy part of real estate.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely correct. I mean, this last year, rates were up.
Yep.
The inventory was down.
Yep.
People didn't want to talk about refinancing because they weren't going to lose their rate. People didn't want to talk about all kinds of stuff to do with mortgage. Like, our industry was just not a very glamorous one to be around whatsoever. And so you can only talk about what a 30-year fixed mortgage is so much, right?
Correct, yeah.
But yet, you've heard me talk while we do our videos. And there's such a massive education and loan programs that people don't even know exist to fulfill their needs and their dreams of real estate investing and things like that. So that's part of where it needs to stay sexy. But I just got to a point where I'm like, 5 seconds isn't going to cut it. 10 seconds isn't going to cut it.
It's true. And I think part of that goes to the fact of knowing that the right people will come and find you, right? Like consistency matters over time, obviously. And you and I have had that conversation early on too with your videos. You're like, okay, well, how many should we do? How often should I post? I'm like, if you stay consistent and you consistently establish yourself as the go-to person, it doesn't matter. Obviously, the more you post, that's the culture we're in, right? Give me more, give me more. But if every video is quality and has the right information, people are okay if it's every week or every other week, whatever type of thing, because they know, okay, no matter what, whenever Kristen posts a video about loan information, I know it's going to give me all the info I need because you've built that rapport over time with people.
Sure. I sure hope so. And I mean that. I mean that in a way of building that rapport based on education.
Yes.
Instead of, I jokingly have said over the last year, but it's true, like the loan officers in the industry haven't had nearly as much business. So the second rates fall 0.25%, they're like foaming at the mouth. Because they're like, this is the refi boom I've been waiting for. I'm going to get rich quick again and get through the next 6 months. But For me, it was always, if you do the right thing, if you educate, the business will come.
Yes.
And I've always felt that way.
And I think that's true. I would like to think in a lot of business, not just in the world that you live in, right?
Yeah.
Like for how I try to run my business, I get asked a lot of like, oh, what are the industries or the niches that you prefer to work in? And I'm like, I really love working with good people. Like I used the example, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was in a potato field in Anago. I was in a vacation rental in Rockford, and I think I shot a podcast and did one other random thing. And none of them were connected, but I was with good people in every single spot. And I'm like, I don't care what you're doing. I'll tell your story no matter what, as long as you're a good person. You can have a good adult conversation about what your needs are. You understand what I can provide, and there's that clear understanding. Everybody wins, right?
100% agree.
So that I think I did an Instagram story about the other day about people also always saying, oh, you need to niche down. I'm like, why? Why do I have to?
No,
like,
you don't have to do anything.
Why can't I focus on what I like to do? And if I have 6 to 8 that I enjoy doing, and I can serve those industries well, why?
Correct. You do the 6 to 8 then.
Correct.
And
yeah.
you do them well. You do them to the best of your ability.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
And the people that are all in on one specific thing, great. They do a wonderful job. But I also feel like then those burnout rates are higher because it's like, how many different ways can I shoot real estate for the next 3 to 5 to 10 years? Is that all that person wants to shoot? Or I only want to do lifestyle? Okay, great. Or I just want to do weddings. Okay, well, a lot of wedding photographers, if you ask them after 3 to 5 years, really hate what they do.
Right.
Even if they're really good at it, because they're so tired of shooting the same thing all the time.
And as you're talking to me, and maybe the audience can hear this too, like I'm picturing different businesses of photography or different businesses where they're constant social and where their feeds and where they're going to. And I can begin to already see really high-end people starting to fail.
Yeah.
And I don't mean fail in a super negative way, but I mean the content they're creating has nothing to do anymore with what they're doing. Like you can tell they don't enjoy it. They're just feeding the beast because they feel like they have to be relevant
or the
in
money
one
or whatever.
Yeah, in one way or another.
Absolutely.
So wow.
Don't get me wrong too. I think the people that do that at a high level do it really well. But like I said, I've had enough conversations with enough people, just using the photography example, right? Like there are really only so many ways that you can shoot a wedding. There are really only so many ways you can shoot a dynamic, engaging video of a house, right? Like, and the people that do it and do it well, I love it. It's fun to watch. They do an amazing job. But when you ask them behind the scenes, like, I've got another wedding this week. I'm like, aren't you excited about that? Like that's a $3,000 to $6,000 payday, depending on the photographer, right? And they're like, yeah, it's fine, but you know, sometimes it's the couple, it's the venue, it's the weather, whatever. I get that, but that's the hard part for me. I'm like, if I'm going to spend time away from my family every day, I want to enjoy what I do. I want to enjoy the people that I'm around, right? All the time. And not every single day is the Super Bowl. Not every day is the happiest day of your life, right? But if I can have a 9 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 success rate for every time I walk into a shoot, I feel like I am doing pretty darn good.
Heck yeah, you are. And that is really a testament to why the quality of the work you do is so massive, because you truly enjoy the people you work with.
Yes, I appreciate
So you want to give a really high quality.
Correct.
The amount of compliments I've gotten on, I love it because people, instead of people saying content, they'll say commercials. Like, I love the new commercials you're putting out.
But that is hilarious, and I appreciate that, and that does make me laugh when people say that. I'm like, oh, like what channel was it on? Like, I'd love to know, where was it? Fox,
TikTok?
CBS?
Yeah.
And like, no, on Instagram. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Very
that's
close.
that's the new TV these days.
Yes,
right? Is it not social media?
It's on your phone, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, marketing is such a unique thing. I have a 10-year background in marketing, and to go from social media, kind of consistently posting, it was more about photos and graphics when people first started off, and a little bit of video, and then it was live video. Everything had to be live streamed. I'm on Facebook Live today, or I'm Instagram Live today, or whatever, and everything had to be streamed. And then we got to this on demand, and then Instagram and TikTok really took over with the vertical video, and that kind of changed the game of everything for people. So business owners are having to face the choice of either embrace it or run the other way, and it's fine, we've been doing the same thing for 20 years. Well, great. If that's your goal, then stick with it, I guess. But what is your actual ceiling? Probably not very high.
Yeah. And it's so, I love that you just brought that up too, because I remember being like, oh, we're vertical now. Oh, okay. Okay. Now we need to be this many seconds, or now we need this, or constantly chasing the algorithm that when you think you chased it and you got it, it changes again.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden now you can't do 10-minute YouTube videos. They only have to be a minute, or now they're shorts, or now they're,
now all of a sudden long form is back. You're like, well, which one is it?
Which one is it? And
make up your mind.
For me personally, long form is always better. I feel like that's where I can educate more.
Agreed, 100%.
And that's where I can get the true depth of why mortgages are interesting and why people should. This is something that isn't taught in school.
Yes.
Credit isn't taught in school. How to pay bills isn't taught in school. Yet it's the very biggest, or not the very big. It's the very biggest thing.
Some good
Welcome
English there.
to me.
Some better, more gooder English there for you.
But it is one of the most important things you need to know when you buy a house. And I know I'm obviously talking to you a lot on my side of things, because that's what we work with. But to get off of the mortgage and what you do for me side of things, what is your favorite thing to do when it comes to marketing? Is it podcast? Is it video? Is it a little bit of everything? And maybe that's such an ambiguous question.
That is an ambiguous question, because I like to defer back to, well, I don't care what it is of the people, right? But since you're pushing me into the box of like answer the question, right? So I went to school for broadcasting. Right? I went to school to be on camera, do sports broadcasting and journalism. That was what I thought I was going to. My goal was to take Wayne Larrabee's job. I wanted to be the Packers broadcaster whenever he retired, and like that's my job.
Yes.
Right? Like that's my goal. Got to do it a little bit around the country and locally in the Milwaukee area and Door County when I did it, and loved it. Still scratch the itch a little bit here with UWGB and the Green Bay Glory in the area, but then I was like, okay, that's a really hard industry. It doesn't pay very well. So then I started a podcast company and ran that for 3.5 years and loved it. I was like podcasting, and it was kind of ahead of the curve of podcasting a little bit. Podcasting was starting to come up, but that was 2018, 19, 20, I believe, or 17, 18, 19, 20, somewhere in that chunk in that time, and loved everything about it. Got to produce over 45 podcasts around the country and 500,000 downloads. Some shows were nominated for awards. It was a fun, big community.
That's so neat. I didn't know all of that. I knew you did the podcast company, but I didn't know all of that. You're such a humble person.
Oh, thank you.
I'm glad that I did just beat you out of it.
I appreciate it. But it was that experience, I think, taught me that that was where I think I really got lined up with working with good people, right? Yeah. Because it wasn't a podcast network tailored around what Baxter wanted. It was around getting the right people in the door and helping them have a platform. The tagline of the network is "We all have a voice."
Yes.
Right? Like we all have a voice. We all can say whatever it is. And I had podcasts about self-help and sports and what it was like to be a military spouse and gaming and movies. Like there was all kinds of stuff, and that it was always fun to look through the catalog on a weekly basis and be like, we're really helping so many people in all over the country, because it was like a fully remote network. My staff was around Wisconsin and in California, and then I was up in Sturgeon Bay during that time, and we had hosts all over the country, and people consistently would my favorite is when people would submit a review of a show and say, oh, Mariah did such a great job with the episode, and then the host would send it to me and say, thank you for giving me a platform to say X, Y, and Z, because I just changed Susie's, life in Texas, right, type of thing. And I'm like,
that's
okay,
amazing.
So much bigger, right? And I'm like, I just gave you a platform, and we do the editing, and it's a small thing, right? But the reach is so much bigger, and that's why I always tell people, I'm like, don't sleep on the influence of what podcasts do, right? So I love video, I love photo, but truly, like, I think podcasting is the thing that brings me the most joy at the end of the day.
Sure.
And I have a couple of clients that do it, not many, and some have done it and some haven't over the years, but that's why I also host a podcast with Mandy Wilkie and Allison Elise, the Real Chat podcast.
Yes.
Subtle plug for that as well.
No, it is. It's a good one if you haven't watched it.
We love it. We love doing it. And the stories, right? The business owners that we talk to, the entrepreneurial struggles and triumphs that go through everything as well. But I just feel like the intimacy of having this conversation. I love interviewing people. I love talking to people. As you mentioned, I can't get all of that out of you in 60 seconds.
No.
But if I get 20 to 30 minutes with you on a couch, we can cover a lot.
Heck yeah.
Right? So I think that allows for that more intimate medium. I always say podcasting is the most intimate medium because whoever might be listening to this episode right now could be at the grocery store, they could be folding laundry, and it's just us and them alone. Even though there might be around other people, right? They could be folding laundry, they could be driving to work.
Point.
It's the most intimate medium we have because it's usually on headphones.
I was just going to say, now I'm picturing everyone walking around with their earbuds in.
Right, and that's what it is, right? You're at their grocery store. Should I buy the squash? Should I buy the zucchini? Whatever. But also Kristen and Baxter are talking about marketing. Okay, great. Like, and it's just us. We're just alone in that moment with that person, right? Type of thing. And it makes such a difference. And you feel like you know those people a lot better, right? That intimate relationship.
I agree. And one of the things I find to be... social media has connected people around the country.
Yes.
I know so many people around the country and now the world, actually.
Yeah,
we've got some friends all over the world now that we've met. Social media keeps us connected.
Correct.
And things of that nature. And now that everything is just so worldwide when it comes to that, you do get that connection more. And you do feel that intimacy with that. I mean, there's a couple podcasts I listen to regularly, and I feel like I know them.
Yes, like if you saw them on the street, be like, oh my gosh, let's talk about X, Y, and Z, and that's the culture now, right? Of them probably not being weirded out by it, where if you came up to, whoever around the street, they'd be like, what? Who are you? What are you talking about? But I agree with social media. I've made so many amazing connections and wonderful friends. I would truly call them friends. One of my favorite people in the world is my social media partner for Colburn Creative. Her name's Delphine, and she lives in California.
Yeah.
And we've been working together for almost a year now, and I finally met her in person 2 weeks ago. She came and did a shoot with me and helped me with a lot of stuff, and it was phenomenal. But the second she got off the airplane, I was like, we're best friends. Like, I know you. And even though I'd never physically met her,
Isn't that amazing?
We've talked tons of times and FaceTimed and texted and called and worked really well together for almost a year. But when she finally physically showed up, I was like, yeah, like I know this about you and you know this about me and we know life and it's great to see you. And I joked with her because I would poke her every once in a while on the shoulder. I'm like, I just have to make sure you're physically here. I'm like, this is so out of body experience. Like you're here. This is crazy. But that's just a small example of someone that I met on Instagram that now is a business partner and now helps a huge piece of what I do on a weekly basis.
Isn't that amazing? So relationship building is real.
Yes, 100%.
It's real.
And that I think goes back to the marketing conversation, right? Like how can you avoid burnout? Have good relationships, have good people around you. Be willing to ask for help, right? I have a client I'm shooting with tomorrow, a realtor, that's doing similar stuff that you and I have done before. And she messaged me today. She's like, I'm excited for the shoot tomorrow, but she's like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, I have ideas for you. I'm like, I'm glad you asked for help because I've had so many people cancel or reschedule and be like, I don't know what I want to talk about. Like, let's push it a month or 3 or 5. And then sometimes that person just goes away because they've talked themselves out of it.
Just day by day. And every day that passes that you're not doing it is every day further away from doing it if you ever come back.
Correct. And that's what I try to advocate for people too, is I'm like, hey, like I'm here to help you, right? Like nobody knows your business or your thing better than you do. I'm here to help you tell that story in a fun, engaging way. So that way you can feel confident knowing that it's being represented the best way possible, whether that is through photos or videos or podcasting.
Right.
That goes a long way.
It does go a long way.
Yeah.
And you do that to a T.
Well,
it's what the work you're doing is very special, and I feel very grateful that I've gotten to know you and that here we are sitting on this couch doing a podcast.
I'm very grateful, truly. And the amount of people that you've introduced me to, or just the connections that we've had. We talked off air briefly. Your daughter is now one of the models that I use for shoots a lot. Like just the relationships that we use and have is such a great thing. And I'm very grateful for that as well.
Yeah. So. And we're grateful for you too, our whole family being a part of the Colburn Creative family.
Under the umbrella now, right?
Yes, under the umbrella is pretty neat. So thank you so much for including all of us.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunities.
And thank you for being here with me. So for those of you who are interested in learning more about Baxter, you can go to colburncreative.com.
Colburn Creative Co. There's another Colburn Creative in Michigan.
Gotcha.
So
colburncreativeco.com.
Yes.
Or reach out. You can always reach out to me. We'll make sure all of your contact information is in the details below.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you so much, Baxter. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening to Always On Point podcast today with Kristen Ambos. Huge thank you to Baxter and Colburn with Colburn Creative Company. If anything struck a chord with what he had to say today or you'd like more information, you can definitely reach out. We'll get you in touch with him. You can also find us weekly on any major podcast platform, including Spotify and YouTube moving forward. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to bringing you the best out there when it comes to mortgage information.